Hello, and welcome to Bookish Haze, a podcast where we get to talk about two of our favorite things, Taylor Swift and reading. I'm Katie.
And I'm Sameen, and every episode we're going to take a book or series and analyze the characters as they relate to songs across Taylor Swift's entire discography. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bookish Haze. I am so excited for this week's episode because it is our second installment of the new episode type that we're calling Blind Date with the Book, but it's going to be our Bookish Haze Coast to Coast edition. So like we did last time, Katie and I both sent over our book recommendations and / requirements, assignments, if you will, via snail mail. Once again, I proceeded to put mine in the mail a little bit too slow for snail mail, and so she did receive hers over text. I apologize, and I will one day soon figure out our postal system.
That's why they invented faster modes of communication.
Yes, that is why we have the ability to talk not via just mail now. That being said, should we just hop into it and do our 3, 2, 1 reveal?
Let's do it.
All right.
Ready?
Yeah. 3, 2,
2, 1. Yay.
Yay.
I like that the color schemes are similar.
Yeah, they're really fun.
Yes. But okay, Sameen, what book did you have?
So I had Songs in Ursa Major by Emma Brodie.
Lovely. And I had Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey.
Ooh, we do love a good Tessa Bailey.
We do. I actually don't know if I've read that many of hers, so this was fun. And also, I totally have not read the first one of this book, so that was kind of a funny coincidence, but I think it was totally fine to not have the background.
Yeah, I was like, do you feel that it took away from the experience? Because I definitely gave that to you with my own biases. I'm going to be completely honest.
I don't think so. I feel like they did a good job of being like, okay, I spent time with my sister last summer. That's how she met my grumpy brother-in-law. But it wasn't like you missed out on all these small details because you didn't read that book. Like they did definitely set the scene of like, okay, they got close and went to Seattle, and then he bought her the record and left it on her doorstep, and now we're here. So she gave all the context needed, which I think was nice.
That's good. Yeah, I think this was also the order that I ended up reading those two books. I read them like 2 years ago, so my memory of the plot is like very limited. I just remember them being like, it was kind of a friends to lovers trope, and I remember them being like very down to earth, kind of fun people.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like a fun town. I kind of enjoyed it. It wasn't like an over the top. Was he an over the top broody person?
No, I feel like his character. So, backing up, the
Yes.
main characters are Fox and I keep wanting to say Scarlet because of like our last book, and I'm like, no, that is not it. But it's because it's like a Scarlet Fox. Fox and Hannah, who is the sister of Piper from the first book, Fox is definitely described as like the town playboy, the golden hair stud, like not anti-broody personality because he's supposed to have all the charm and riz. And the premise of the book is that yes, they had this experience from the previous book, and then they split because Hannah lives in LA as a production assistant. And Fox lives in Newport, I believe it's called. I'm definitely blanking on the name, but in a town in Washington as like a crab fisherman. And so Hannah convinces her boss to bring them all to this town where she spent the summer and has a lot of good memories and shoot her film there. And so that is how they are reconnected. And of course, Piper's guest room is full because her in-laws are visiting, and so she has to stay with Fox in his spare bedroom. So they are forced proximity indeed.
I love the way that they did forced proximity, but then they didn't have to put in the one bed trope just from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
She was just like, we're being so sly.
No, literally. Also, I thought it was funny that it was like, he's not there anyways. He goes on so many trips, and it's just like, okay, you know he's going to be there like so much.
Mans is definitely always there. I forgot about the crabbing bit. That's really funny.
Yeah, it was kind of like interesting because of the way that his job actually got to interact with hers because he lived right by the marina. That's where the boat was. And so you got those scenes where they were like shooting at the marina, and there was Fox shirtless, of course, like on the boat fixing something, flexing his muscles and stuff. So it was kind of a cute little way to work those experiences in, as well as the way like I don't know how the first book was, but the way that the sea and the ocean and Fox describes it is like very beautiful and like very poetic.
Mhm.
And kind of the vibe of like he fully like respects nature, and likes kind of, you know, that adrenaline rush that you get from not knowing how the ocean will react. So I thought it was like, yeah, very beautiful and very set the scene for what type of town this was.
I like this. Yeah, I think Tessa Bailey does a very good job with rom-coms, as we know, because she is very good at writing so many of them.
Indeed. We can circle back around to my book, but let's talk about yours. Give me the premise of it, because when I was picking a book, I was just like, this has caught my eye last time, but I went with the Sally Rooney book because I had just finished it. So I'm very curious to hear what you thought and like what it was.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this book was actually really interesting. I feel like it felt a lot like Daisy Jones and the Six
Okay.
by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is one of my all-time top favorite authors. But it also just felt less like, I feel like when I've read a lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, it just feels a little bit like you have to be in the mood for something that's kind of detached.
Mm.
And in this case, it wasn't quite that. I think the biggest similarity is honestly just that it was like an up and coming band that ended up going on tour in the 70s. 70s. Yeah, that seems correct. Um, and through this, it was essentially like this band has been playing together from high school, and they get their big break at a fest when they show up in place of Jesse Reed, who is a like top 40, top one, absolute like top of his stardom star. And he doesn't make it to this festival on this tiny island off of Massachusetts. And when he can't take the stage, they call up the Breakers, which is this like tiny band. And the lead singer, Jane, sings, and she has the most star power anyone has ever seen in their lives. And she just is beautiful and talented and is capable of picking up an instrument and playing it at the drop of a hat and writing these amazing songs that just like hit you to your core. And that's kind of like the premise of it. And so they go out together and they end up, she gets this like kind of big break and then ends up meeting Jesse because he's staying. He had, it turned out that he got into a motorcycle accident and that's why he wasn't able to take the stage. And so then they end up spending a lot of time together because her aunt is the person that's like the caregiver for his case. And so she will go over
Oh.
and like, she went over for the first time to like pick up her aunt from work and just like check in with her, and ended up seeing this like beautiful piano that was in the front room of Jesse's house where the caregiving is happening because he's loaded and can afford at home nurses. um, and then Jane walks in, she sees this piano, she's like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful, it's like calling to me. And she learns how to play piano just like on the spot. She's never played piano before, by the way. um,
Casual.
yeah, classic. I think it was really well written though, because it at no point did it go where I thought it was going to go. I was
Okay.
out to dinner while I was like halfway through this book, and my friend was asking me, and she was like, "Is this a rom com then?" And I was like, "I don't know yet if it's a rom com or if it's a romance." And I checked on Storygraph, and it goes under historical and fiction and romance.
Okay.
So I do think that it probably counts a little bit more as like historical fiction as far as like official genres go, but I wasn't about to open up Goodreads to do that. And I found that it was written really well as, I guess, another coming of age novel. So you're picking off a lot of these coming of age novels on my shelf, which I really appreciate. She's 19 years old. She goes on
Oh.
tour, and it was really funny because you get through the first half of the book, and you know when you read a book and you like are getting towards the end and you're like, oh, we finally hit my happy ending. And then you get towards the end of the book and you're like, no, but there's only 15 pages left. I'm going to get my happy ending. I had the opposite issue with this one. So we got through it and it was like, all right, they did their rise to stardom. They're going on this really like they go and they record their first album. They piss off a producer who's like insanely misogynistic, and honestly,
Good for
go
them.
Jane for all her feminism, like totally needed it. And then she ends up, because she's friends with Jesse, he's like, I want you guys to headline the tour. She's like, oh, fuck yeah, like this is going to be my big break. They go on tour and everything is wonderful and perfect. And Jane is dating Jesse and it feels like they're just drawn to each other. And it's like every single thing that you read in a rom-com where you're like, oh, these people are meant for each other. But you're not even halfway through the fucking book. Just like,
We're really giving like a
no.
Star is Born vibes where it's like everything is wonderful and then you're checking the movie time.
And you're like, shit, what's gonna go wrong?
Something's
And
about
the
to hit the
answer is
fan.
everything. And it's just like at the drop of a hat, it's like, all right, they're gonna finish this tour, but the band is gonna end up breaking up. She ends up going back home. She ends up, initially she was like, I refused to write songs because it made me feel really unhinged. And so she writes all these really amazing like songs when she goes home, but she's kind of like in and out of it as it's happening, and like very much like she ends up having to break up with Jesse because Jesse is like strung out on heroin
Oh,
constantly, and she's like, I can't
cool.
fucking deal with this, which is like
Good.
so valid.
Yeah.
Um, and then she writes all this really fantastic music, and she finally gets her second chance at an album, even though everyone, like the label, is like, you can't do this. But she has an A&R guy, which apparently is a thing, and I don't really know what that means. But
I
his
was
name
like,
is Willie.
oh.
We like Willie. That's the important
Yay,
part.
Willie.
Willie is the best. So Willie's like, okay, great. I'm going to continue to root for you. We're going to keep going with this. And she's like, all right, thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate the second chance. I'm not going to fuck it up. And so she does as much as she can to get the second album out there. And then they're waiting for the second album to like, for the time, like it's been made, it's been done. She doesn't really run into Jesse again. She doesn't have to deal with all of this. And then he knocks on her door one night in Massachusetts, and they like connect again. They sleep together, and he's like, will you run away with me? Will you marry me? She's like, I cannot do this. And um it's funny because like he's also like, he had gone when they broke up while they were on that tour. He ended up being pushed together with another person who was also a rising star, and her name is Morgan. And Morgan had
Hmm.
agreed to be in this relationship with him because she loves him.
What?
He does not love her.
Oh
He
no.
loves women. And so he's like, okay, fine. So then he gets pissed, walks away, ends up getting married to Morgan. This book spans years,
Okay,
and
I was
you
just gonna
cannot.
say.
No, it's absolutely batshit. It's like everything that could possibly hit the fan afterwards does. So he gets married to this other girl. They're having all the stardom. Her second album comes out, but then it doesn't sell as much. And they're also just pulling a bunch of promo because her label is pissed at her again. Another thing sets her off, and she ends up going to Greece for a little while and just like fucking hanging out there. Um,
Okay, Mamma Mia.
and just like, yeah, I wish she had a Mamma Mia moment. Like, I wish she was like this close to getting a Mamma Mia moment, and that would have been so good for her. Um, and then, she comes back. They talk about the Grammys briefly, which was really funny because they were like, what the fuck is this stupid award show that nobody cares about? And I was like,
Real.
boy, do I have a thing to tell you about the Grammys. And eventually, like, you get to this point where it is somewhat of a happy ending, right? But it's not a happy ending where you get Jesse and Jane together. You get
Okay.
this like connection, and they come out as really good friends, and they both end up with like families with other people. I think it's not clear who she's having her daughters with. And he is explicitly mentioned as someone who like gets married a second time and like has kids. And it was like, I think like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a coming of age story that included this like elements of romance that became into like, that changed from like romantic love into platonic love, and like the ability for how familial love can also be just like such a strong concept, and like brought in the concept of mental illness, but not in a way that like made you upset. She did have a tragic backstory, as we see with a lot of these books, right? Like, I don't know why can't have a good two-parent household in any of these. Um, but they didn't, and it was again like they did that trope, right? Where they were like, you kind of like keep going and going, and then you're like, what happened with this? And then it's like, okay, let me tell you. But the way that they told you was really well done as well, because it was like written out as like Jesse kind of figures it out from her song lyrics because he's the person that understands her best.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay. That's
so
wholesome.
that was kind of a synopsis and a little bit of a review, if you will. I really enjoyed it. I ended it last night and I was like, that was incredibly well written.
Amazing.
That's the end of my spiel.
Great spiel. But yeah, no, that was amazing. I feel like I really went on that journey with you because you kind of started out like you said, where you were like not sure if it's romance. It's like you started talking and I was like, oh, this, yeah, like give him
Yeah.
Star is Born, like said TJR vibes, whatever. And then you were like, and then they break up and he's on a heroin, and I was like, what? So no, it sounds really good, really well written. I do like. I feel like we don't read a lot of books that span decades like that and that kind of explore relationships going through, yeah, like different iterations. So that sounds really wonderful. It also reminds me of a book. I went to see this author speak at the bookstore, and she wrote a book called Homeseeking that does something similar, where it was like these
Ooh.
two friends grew up together, I think like kind of missed opportunity to be in a relationship, and then they broke up and then kind of reunite, I think, throughout the years at different times, and kind of encounter each other in different stages of their lives and reconnect. And yeah, so it seems like a similar vibe. And I haven't read that book yet, but it's on my list once I get it from the library.
It sounds like a great book. We
Yeah.
should add it to both our lists.
Yes. But yeah, that's awesome. So what did you end up giving it as a rating then?
I think I'm around a 4.5.
Okay, yeah, that's
It was really good.
pretty high praise. And
Mhm.
how long was the book? Because it didn't look that long.
It
Like,
is, let's find out. On hardcover, we're looking at 324 pages.
wow, that's like pretty small, I feel like. So to wind all of that in 300 barely plus pages, and still feel like it's well done, and like all the complexities of the relationships were explored, and it like had a resolution is impressive.
Yeah, it was, I don't know how she did it, honestly. I think that there were like a good chunk of time jumps, but I didn't necessarily feel like it was a time jump. It was just
Hmm.
kind of like, okay, it makes sense because it takes them, let's say, 6 weeks to make the album, but we understand them kind of going through the process, or she would note what the routine was in the process. And so suddenly we got through 6 weeks because not a lot had happened, but we caught the major moments. And then we get to the point where it's like, okay, we've gotten through the initial recording, we got through the first bit of like Jane having to stand up for her band,
Hmm.
which was also a really interesting moment in the book, I think, because I didn't realize this. I don't know if you did, but like there just wasn't like female lead singers at that time, which I feel like
Yeah.
maybe now it's also like my media bubble slash like our media bubble
Yeah.
is pretty solidly consumed by Taylor Swift.
Yep.
But like just in general, it was like, we're not going to pay you any attention. We're not going to like, there was one moment that was like, I was like, I can feel this in my bones because every woman has had this happen to her. And she was just like in the room and she had asked a question of like, oh, how is this going to be marketed? And the man answered her and was like, oh, you know, like the way that it normally is. And then her bandmate asked the same question and he was a man. And then he got like the full blown, like, we're going to take these steps. This is how we're going to do it. It's going to be on billboards, all of this. And it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, I feel this in my bones.
Yeah, like one of those moments where you're like, she has lived through this moment as well.
Yes. So yeah, 4.5 stars. I think it was really well written. She got through the time jumps well. And know that I said it's pretty similar to Daisy Jones and the Six. I will say, um, you felt a lot more connected to the narrator. She still
Hmm.
felt like an unreliable narrator, but it didn't feel like she was just lost in her own mind. You kind of went with her when she got lost in her own mind
Nice.
and lost in the ambition and in the stardom. And I think that that was just really well conveyed.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it sounds great. I might need to add it to my list. I'd never even heard of it before, so this is a lovely experience to hear your
yeah,
thoughts and also discover something new.
I love it. We found it in the thrift shop. So
Oh, double of that. That's so great.
yeah. Let's talk about Hook, Line, and Sinker.
Yes. It's funny that you're talking about like bands. I feel like because I had just read Hook, Line, and Sinker, which has a moment where essentially Hannah was really young when her dad passed away.
Mhm.
And so she didn't really feel like she had this connection to him because, she doesn't have any real memories with him. And she is very into music. That is like her passion project, or not passion project, her passion period. And so like eventually at some point she finds these sea shanties that her dad wrote that her grandma gives her, and she experiences this indie band that she was like, they would be perfect for the sound of these sea shanties, and so she gets them to produce them. Long story short, it just reminded me, like, that is what I'm picturing, like this indie, like, small band with like just the main woman who can belt the fuck out of a song. And yeah, so that is kind of what I've been picturing. That was unrelated to the rest of the book, but it was a moment I did like. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this book. You know, I love a good rom-com. I think I also gave it 4.5 stars.
Nice.
Yeah, like it was a very feel good book, I think. For the most part, there's a few parts that I think like they draw out the conflict a little too long because essentially, right, like the big thing I would say is that Hannah obviously lives in LA and Fox lives in Westport. I fact checked myself. But Fox has a lot of hangups around being basically boyfriend material because all of his life he's been told he's like pretty and mainly there for a good time. And so that's kind of like sunk into his psyche because it came not only from like those around him, but also his parents. And yeah, he like as an adult has this reputation of kind of um, being a joke, not a jokester necessarily, but just like someone who you shouldn't take seriously and will, you know, take a girl home for the night and not do long term. And that definitely shows a lot in his character. But I think the Tessa Bailey did a really good job at not making it kind of like annoying because he doesn't really like admit it that much. But you see like Hannah pick up on it and call him out on it. And so I really liked the aspect of, I mean, they called it like, you know, LA therapy speak, but I think it was done in a way that you were just like, okay, she understands him. Like she is his person. Like she's going to push when she should and needs to, but not necessarily in a way that's like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes you get these experiences where it's like the person is prodding and prying too much and
Yeah.
the other character like reacts poorly and then they never resolve everything and it's just like this huge blow up and that's the conflict. Whereas I feel like the focus, like I said, was more on like working through Fox's demons.
And they do more of like a show don't tell kind of feeling of that like Playboy piece of just like, I understand what you're saying and you didn't have to tell me that he's a Playboy because I saw it happen.
Yes, definitely. And it's also well done because he hasn't been a Playboy, right, since he met Hannah. And so it is
Yeah.
just, it really drives home that it's like other people's impressions of him that are really causing this belief, perception. That's the word I'm looking for. And then on Hannah's side, I think it's, again, this book obviously is a romance, but it does a good job at like exploring around, you know, how people perceive themselves and being brave to do something scary and new. Because Hannah is a video or a production assistant and she really wants to work in as a music coordinator,
Sure.
um like the people who help create soundtracks for movies. And so I guess her stepfather is a hotshot who could have gotten her the job she wanted, but she was trying to like, you know, work from the bottom up, which is very admirable. And so she views herself as this, as not the leading lady, right? Like that's her sister Piper. That's the one who everyone like is drawn to and really like takes center stage and just like knows what she wants and goes for it. And Hannah is the opposite of that. She's like the supporting character, the one who always has good advice. And so a lot of this character building, I guess, was around her realizing that she can be the leading lady and she is also a great supporting friend. Like there's a scene where Piper was with her in-laws and Hannah just like smoothed everything over so that they really liked Piper and like just made it, I don't know, like I really enjoyed reading that scene because I felt like I was there where you're like, yeah, there is like this awkwardness and you don't know what, like me as the person doesn't know what to say, but I have like my wing woman who is just like so effusive and so bubbly and like just makes everyone feel welcome to the point where it's no longer awkward.
And like
um
brings out the best in her sister. That's
yes,
good.
100%. um and so yeah, I really liked reading the character growth that they did like separately but also like together because a lot of the times Hannah was like, well, I can't tell Fox to, you know, be brave and believe in himself if I'm not taking steps in order to go after what I want.
Nice. I feel like those are characters that you can root for also. It sounds like they were written just like, because I feel like recently we've read a lot of books where we're just kind of sitting there and it's like, I really don't like this character enough to like want good for them.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think they felt a lot more down to earth. Like I obviously said I really liked Deep End,
Mhm.
and the characters there, but these characters felt more grounded. And I think the way they approached things were a way that was not just like so frustrating to be like, oh, it's just a miscommunication trope over and over. Like it kind of was, but in the sense that they were being like particularly obtuse, so they had to like learn how to work through it to be like, yes, we can be
Interesting.
together. But yeah, the one thing I think I found most interesting was, or sorry, most annoying was the fact that it was constantly just like, well, maybe he doesn't like me as much as I like him, and maybe she doesn't like me as much as I like her, and that's why it's too fast for Tasker to move here, and like maybe I shouldn't move here right away. And I'm like, okay, you guys are obviously both obsessed with each other. Like, just we could have left that part out, and I would have been like a-okay.
You're like, I get it. This is pretty classic, but I think we need to move on now.
Yeah, like it felt almost like we just need to add like one more little conflict in here. So like let's make them insecure
Yeah.
about this. And it's like, okay, no.
Like, why? No one has to be continuously insecure. It's okay to be secure. Fine.
Exactly. Yeah. But it gives me like I think I get very drawn to these people or these characters who are like small town, salt of the earth type vibes. Because
Mhm.
I think like I've historically talked about People Meet on Vacation is one of my favorite books, but also just like favorite of Emily Henry's. And it's part of that like same vibe, I think, where yes, obviously they're from the Midwest and Ohio, so I'm like slay.
Sweet home.
But yeah, like literally like they just like me. But it's also how Alex is described, right? As this like steady present. He is like a teacher. But yeah, he's just like, boring, but obviously not boring. And yeah, I feel like I like connect to them because I'm like, wow, you are so like solid, I guess.
I like this. Yeah, I have no additional thought right now. I had a question and I lost it.
No worries. Happens to me all the time, as we all know. But I guess like flipping back to your book, do you feel like the resolution was something you like? I know you said that you weren't sure where the book was going when you were talking to your friend about it, but like as you got through it, were you surprised that they even reconnected into platonic friendship, or did you think that it was going to end like either with not happily ever after or
I thought
anything?
they were going to end up together. I thought it was going to be a rom-com at the end. And I like also the ending, spoilers, obviously, as this entire podcast is, but the ending was literally just like a newspaper article.
Oh,
And they had opened up some like non-for-profit in the area, and they were like, the old band and Jesse Reed and Jane, they were all in this together, working hard, doing it for the good of the people. And then they were like, this is where everyone is. So it was very much like how the end of the 2000s rom-com is. But like in newspaper format, which was a little bit different.
that's
And
cool.
I thought interesting. Uh,
Yeah, I'm curious, like trying to think about how they printed that because Hook, Line, and Sinker opens with text messages, but
yeah.
like those are easy, you just have it look like you printed out your iMessages. But I feel like newspaper would be hard.
Yeah, this one it was just like the article. So I feel like it was,
Mm, like
hold on, I
formatting
can
was
pull it up
normal.
here. Yeah, the formatting was pretty normal. It was just like a difference in font.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just different in font. And then underneath like the chapter title, instead of showing like the location, it just says the Island Gazette, and then it states the date and like who wrote it. Which I think was really interesting. I also liked that this book had a lot of different points of view
Mm.
when in the writing. So like you kind of got a little bit of like the sound engineer's view, you got a little bit of Jane's view, you got a little bit of Jesse's view, you got a little bit of Rich's view. Um, yeah, there's a lot that happened in it all at once.
That's cool.
But
So was it like third person? So you would sometimes get,
it was
yeah, like
third
you said.
person.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
For Hook, Line, and Sinker, what did you think of how they got to the resolution? Slash, what ended up being the resolution?
Yeah, so the resolution is that they were together and
Aw.
so cute to wholesome. Um, and Hannah ends up moving from LA to they don't live in Westport anymore. They live somewhere in between Seattle and Westport so that they can both commute to their corresponding jobs. Um,
Nice.
and yeah, ultimately, so like I guess the other conflict that Fox was going through was that his captain wanted him to take over the crabbing ship because he was opening a new one, and he was like
Big
going back to the
responsibility.
everyone just sees me as like a good time. He's like, people don't respect me. Like I don't want the responsibility. I don't like deserve that job essentially. And so he ends up taking it, surprise, because we find out that this was like one of his dreams when he was younger, but he let it go once everyone like once he thought that, you know, no one would take him seriously.
Oh, not the pressures of a small
Oh,
town.
no, literally. Yeah, and then Hannah discovers that her dream job is not necessarily like movie soundtrack. Well, it is, but not directly like working on movies, but working with bands and then selling like the songs they created and like matching it with movie soundtracks. So kind of like movie adjacent, but no longer on the production set.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. I feel like Seattle's a great place for her to have ended up.
No bias,
No
of course.
biases.
Um, yeah, but I think it was really cute. I like how they ended it in a way that it was like they both kind of got the fresh start that they needed because they moved to this new town a little bit of a like we can be who we want to be here with like less expectations because not as many people know us. I was actually this just reminded me of the one other thing I didn't like about the book, which was like Fox's backstory of like he tried to move away once, but then when he went to college, you know, sex just followed him and like he found out that he was like the side piece for this girl. And he was
Like,
like the hall pass for his startup's co-founder. Yeah.
what?
But yeah, I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But basically, he co-founded this company with someone and he was sleeping with that person's girlfriend unbeknownst to him.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was like his backstory, and then he was like, okay, everyone just sees me not as boyfriend material, and then he comes home and starts crabbing. Um, yeah, so and I was like, I
that's
get
so
that,
sad.
yeah, and like not to belittle that, but I was like, this is like one very specific, like it was just like a very specific backstory piece that I was like, I feel like you could have done the same thing with in a way that didn't feel like really weird. Like he
Yeah.
started a startup about like drone footage and like then he slept with his co-founder's girlfriend, but he didn't know because like they never came around together or something. I was like, this is too many pieces that just seem a little sus.
I feel like it sounds like she was trying to avoid the like I have parental trauma background and then replaced it with like I accidentally slept with my friend's girlfriend. My
So,
dad.
yeah. Although he does also have parental trauma because his dad was a player as well, and his mom flinches at the sight of him, which we find out is not because she thinks he looks like his dad, but because she feels guilty about like what she put him through growing up, essentially. So he's just getting the double whammy, left and right.
That is such a double whammy, you're right.
Yeah, but yeah, Fox's backstory was like, or just like his general psyche was so sad to read. He was basically just like did not think he deserved anything more than like what he was doing. Um, and also, I feel like I don't know if I made this up because he's described as like this blonde hair god, but I feel like in Once Upon a Broken Heart, Apollo had similar vibes. Like we kind of get that point where everyone just thought he was like a pretty face. Was that book or is it something else?
I
Um,
think that does make sense.
yeah. So I was like, it's very like related to something else I read.
No, I think you're right. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's been a couple of other books that we've talked about where it's like people have been branded players and then they're like, this is how that's impacted my psyche. And I'm like, it's a hard knock life.
So real. Oh, I was just say overall, I think these were. It sounds like really fun picks, like really good picks for us.
Mhm.
I want to say I'm proud of us for our last picks, but I think these were more ones that we devoured in that sense. Like they were faster reads.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the last ones were really like truly in the sense of cleaning out the TBR, and this one was like cleaning out the TBR, but enjoying it when you do.
Exactly. Um, and it was good to have a little more like fun romance in the month of love. Um,
Yeah, it is still Valentine's month.
mhm.
That's cute.
Yes, but
Well, on that note, did you have a song or an album to connect this with?
I don't. I was really thinking about this because I was just like, it's not coming of age because they're like, I think in their 30s maybe or like late 20s. But it's kind of that vibe of like self discovery. And I was like, I know there's songs that Taylor has that are kind of related, but nothing really felt like it fit.
Hmm.
I was thinking maybe something from Red, like kind of Begin Again, even though they don't really have that moment of I walked in and discovered him, but it was kind of more, yeah, that like I think Begin Again has that kind of grounded feeling that I was talking about that these characters have. But no, I didn't have one that immediately came to mind or that I really landed on. How about you?
That's fair. I was also kind of doing the same thing. I was like, I don't know if there's a specific song. I feel like I could go through the eras a little bit better. So I feel like this book started out a little bit more in that like 1989, like rise to stardom. You get a little bit of like, if you watch Miss Americana, you get like some of the backstory of like what was happening behind the scenes type of feeling that like moved on into sort of rep. Um,
Okay.
and just kind of like this was a low point in the career, and like her reputation was definitely on the line. But I actually think that her, like Jane's rep era in this one was more Evermore like, just in like settling into it and like writing songs that had a lot of like heart in it versus like
Mhm.
having more of like the pop rock kind of feel to it. It was more
Yeah.
of like this folk indie kind of album, which I think hit Evermore. And then I remember that we used to talk about, like when we talked about like the lyrics of the song, the one in Evermore that I always was thinking about was where it was like, you kind of start and it was like, this is going to be forever, and then she realizes towards the end that like this type of pain and like this type of like sadness and hardship is not going to last forever, and like happiness can exist forevermore. um and I feel like that's kind of like some of the ups and downs that this character and like these series of characters went through, of just like understanding that like you are coming of age, you're literally 20 years old, and life sucks when you're literally 20 years old, and
Facts.
then it like gets a little bit better. I say from my high horse as a 26-year-old, let me just put that there. um
We're jaded and cynical out here, though.
we're so tired.
Yeah,
We're so
but
tired, we just want rights, that's it.
yeah. But on that note,
On that really fun note,
that's the end of this week's episode. We hope you all enjoyed, and let us know if you've read either of these books and what you thought. Catch us in 2 weeks. We are finally talking about Onyx Storm. I know we're a bit delayed, but it's time. I
yay.
actually haven't heard that many spoilers or reactions about it, so I'm excited to talk it through and see what you think. Um, but yeah, I hope you all have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you later. Also, check us out on Instagram and TikTok and follow us for updates.
At Bookish Haze Pod.
Yes, thank you. Bye, all.
Bye.